The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Olivia Preston realized the stagecoach had stopped moving, and her heart hammered against her rib cage as male voices shouted demands from somewhere ahead on the mountain road. She pressed herself against the worn leather seat, fingers clutching the small carpet bag that contained everything she owned in this world. Through the dusty window, she could see nothing but towering pines and the steep drop-off that fell away into a rocky gorge below. The September morning of 1878 had started with such promise when she boarded the stage in Nevada, Missouri, bound for Denver, where a teaching position awaited her. Now, barely 2 days into the journey through the Colorado Territory, everything had gone terribly wrong. "Everyone out!" The command came harsh and brutal. "Now, unless you want lead poisoning," the stagecoach driver's voice followed, tight with barely controlled fear. "Do what they say, folks. These boys mean business." Olivia's hands trembled as she smoothed down her dark green traveling dress. She was 22 years old, had never been more than 50 miles from home until 3 days ago, and now faced the prospect of being robbed or worse by road agents in the middle of nowhere. Her father had warned her that traveling west alone was dangerous for a young woman, but she had been so determined to make her own way, to prove she could stand on her own 2 feet after her mother's death, left her with nothing but debts and faded memories. The door yanked open, and a man with a red bandana covering half his face gestured with his pistol. "Move it, lady." She climbed down on shaking legs, joining the 3 other passengers who already stood with their hands raised. The driver and the shotgun guard stood near the front of the coach, the guard's weapon conspicuously absent from his hands. 6 men on horseback surrounded them, all armed, all watching with eyes that made Olivia's skin crawl. "This is a toll road now," announced the apparent leader, a tall man with a scar running down his left cheek, visible even above his bandana. "You pay the toll, you get to keep breathing. Simple as that." The other passengers quickly surrendered their valuables. A merchant handed over his pocket watch and wallet. An elderly couple gave up a small leather purse. Then the raiders' attention turned to Olivia. "Your turn, pretty lady. That's a nice bag you got there." "It's just clothes," Olivia said, hating how her voice shook. "I have nothing of value." "I'll be the judge of that." He stepped closer, and she could smell whiskey on his breath even through the bandana. "Hand it over." She clutched the bag tighter. Inside was her mother's Bible, the only thing she had left of her family, along with the letter confirming her teaching position and the small amount of money meant to sustain her until her first payment. Without it, she would arrive in Denver with absolutely nothing. "I said hand it over." The raider's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "There's nothing you want in here," Olivia insisted, her stubbornness overriding her fear. "Please, it's all I have." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, yanking her forward. "Then you won't miss it, will you?" The gunshot that rang out this time came from a completely different direction, kicking up dust at the raider's feet and making him release Olivia instantly. Everyone spun toward the tree line where a figure emerged from the shadows of the pines, rifle held steady in hands that looked like they had been born holding a weapon. The man who stepped onto the road was unlike anyone Olivia had ever seen. He stood well over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and powerfully built, with muscles evident even through his buckskin shirt and worn leather vest. His hair fell past his shoulders, dark brown with hints of sun-bleached lighter streaks, and a thick beard covered his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, pale blue and sharp as winter ice, missing nothing as they swept across the scene. "Road's closed," he said, his voice a deep rumble that somehow carried more authority than all 6 raiders combined. "Time for you boys to move along." The scarred leader recovered his composure quickly. "You're outnumbered 6-1, friend. Might want to reconsider playing hero." "Might want to look around first." The mountain man's expression did not change. "See those glints in the trees? I've got 3 rifles trained on you right now, plus mine makes 4. Your choice is right away or get planted. Either way works for me." Olivia glanced toward the tree line but could see nothing. She had no idea if the man was bluffing or not, but the raiders clearly were not eager to find out. The scarred leader's eyes narrowed, calculating odds. "This ain't over," he finally said. "We control this road. These folks want to get to Denver. They go through us." "No, they don't." The mountain man took another step forward, and Olivia noticed he moved with the easy confidence of a predator, all coiled strength and controlled power. "I know another path through these mountains. Goes around your little blockade." I'll take them through myself. You're making a mistake. Only mistake here is you boys not riding away while you still can. My patience is wearing thin." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, the scarred leader spat in the dust and jerked his head toward his men. "Let's go. We'll be waiting when you come back this way, mountain man. Count on it." They wheeled their horses and galloped back up the road, disappearing around a bend. The mountain man did not lower his rifle until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. Only then did he turn to face the stagecoach driver. "Name's Pierce Barrett," he said. "I've been tracking that gang for 2 days. They've set up camp about 3 miles ahead, got the main road blocked solid with fallen trees. You try to go through there, you'll be sitting ducks." The driver, a grizzled man in his 50s, wiped sweat from his brow. "Appreciate the help, mister, but if the road's blocked, how are we supposed to get these folks to Denver?" "Like I said, I know another way. Old game trail that cuts through the high country. It's rough going, but a stagecoach can make it if the driver knows what he's doing." Pierce's gaze shifted to each passenger in turn before settling on Olivia. "It will add 2 days to your journey, maybe 3. Anyone not willing to take that risk can turn back now." "I have to get to Denver," Olivia said immediately. "I have a position waiting for me." "Same here," the merchant added. "Got business that won't wait." The elderly couple nodded their agreement. The driver scratched his jaw, thinking, "You're talking about the Broken Ridge Trail? I've heard of it, but I've never driven it." "I've driven it plenty. I'll guide you through." Pierce slung his rifle over his shoulder with an easy motion. "But we need to move now. Those raiders will be back once they realize I was alone, and they'll be angry." "You were alone?" Olivia could not keep the surprise from her voice. "But you said you had 3 other rifles in the trees." Those ice-blue eyes fixed on her, and she saw the hint of amusement in them. "I said there were glints in the trees that could be rifles. Never said there were men holding them. Propped up some tin cups and my spare gear to catch the sunlight just right before I came down." Despite everything, Olivia felt a smile tug at her lips. That was quite a gamble. Sometimes a bluff is all you've got. He moved to the front of the stagecoach, examining the horses with a practiced eye. "These animals are tired. We will need to rest them before we attempt the high trail, but not here. There is a clearing about a mile east where we can stop safely for an hour." The driver nodded. "You're calling the shots, Barrett. We'd all be dead or worse without you." "Then let's move. Madam, you'll want to secure everything inside the coach. The trail gets bumpy." Pierce offered Olivia his hand to help her back into the stagecoach, and when she took it, she felt the calluses and strength in his grip. His hand completely engulfed hers, warm and steady. "Thank you," she said softly, meeting his eyes, "for what you did back there. That man would have taken everything I own." "Can't abide thieves," Pierce replied, "or men who threaten women. Get settled in now. We've got a long road ahead." He released her hand, and Olivia climbed back into the coach, her heart still racing, but no longer from fear. She watched through the window as Pierce swung onto a large roan horse that emerged from the trees at his whistle. He was magnificent in the saddle, moving as if he and the horse were one creature. The merchant and elderly couple settled into their seats across from her as the stagecoach lurched into motion, turning off the main road onto what looked like barely more than a deer path. "That's quite a man," the merchant observed. "Mountain men are rare these days. Most of them died off or moved on when the fur trade collapsed." "He lives up in the high country," the elderly man added. He had introduced himself earlier as Harold, traveling with his wife Martha. "Must be a hard life, all alone up there." Olivia found herself wondering about that. What would drive a man to live in such isolation? Pierce Barrett clearly knew these mountains intimately, moved through them with the ease of someone for whom the wilderness was home rather than hostile territory. She studied him through the window as he rode ahead of the stagecoach, rifle across his lap, constantly scanning the terrain around them. The mile to the clearing took nearly 30 minutes along the narrow trail. When they finally stopped, Pierce dismounted and immediately began checking the stage horses, running his hands along their legs and checking their hooves with competent efficiency. "They will make it," he announced to the driver, "but we take the steep sections slow and steady. Can't afford a lame horse up there." Olivia climbed out to stretch her legs, grateful for the chance to move. The clearing was small but peaceful, surrounded by aspens whose leaves had just begun to turn gold with the changing season. A small creek burbled nearby, and Pierce led the horses to drink while the driver broke out some hardtack and jerky for the passengers. "You should eat something," Pierce said, appearing at Olivia's elbow with surprising quietness for such a large man. He held out a piece of jerky. "Going to be a long afternoon." "Thank you." She took the offered food, studying him more closely now that the immediate danger had passed. Up close, she could see the weathered quality of his skin, the result of years exposed to sun and wind. Lines crinkled around his eyes, suggesting he was perhaps in his late 20s or early 30s. His hands were scarred in places, and he moved with the slight stiffness of someone carrying old injuries. "Have you lived in these mountains long?" "Going on 8 years now." Pierce leaned against a nearby tree, his gaze still moving constantly, always watchful. "Came out here after the war, needed somewhere quiet." "The war?" Olivia nodded. So many men had been shaped by those terrible years, left scarred in ways that went deeper than flesh. "I was just a child when it ended, but I remember the soldiers coming home. Some of them were never quite the same. Most of us weren't." His voice carried a weight of memory. "But the mountains don't care about what a man did or saw. They just are. That suits me fine." "Don't you get lonely?" Pierce's eyes shifted to her, and she saw something in them that made her breath catch. "Sometimes. But lonely beats being around people who don't understand. Up here, life's simple. Hunt, trap, survive. No politics, no sides, no causes worth dying for." "No connections either," Olivia observed softly. "No one to care about you or worry when you don't come home. That's the point." But his voice lacked conviction, and Olivia wondered if he truly believed that, or if it was simply what he told himself to justify the isolation. "Well, I'm very glad you were here today regardless," she said firmly. "You saved all of us. Just happened to be tracking those raiders. Right place, right time." He pushed off the tree. "Speaking of which, we should move. I want to make the first ridge before nightfall." The afternoon proved every bit as challenging as Pierce had warned. The game trail climbed steadily, switchbacking up the mountainside through terrain that made Olivia's stomach clench every time she looked out the window at the drops falling away beside them. The stagecoach creaked and groaned over rocks and roots, tilting at alarming angles that had Martha clutching her husband's arm and praying quietly. But Pierce rode ahead, never rushing, calling back instructions to the driver about where to position the wheels and when to brake. His knowledge of the trail was absolute, and slowly Olivia began to relax, trusting that he would see them through safely. They were perhaps 2 hours into the climb when Pierce suddenly raised his hand, bringing the stagecoach to a halt. Olivia leaned out the window and saw him staring back down the trail they had climbed, his body tense. "What is it?" she called. "We're being followed." He turned his horse, looking at the driver. "I saw sun flash off metal down there, maybe a half-mile back. Could be those raiders decided to come after us." "Can we outrun them?" the driver asked. "Not on this trail. Too dangerous to go faster." Pierce's jaw set in a hard line. "But there is a place ahead where the trail forks. One path continues up and over the main ridge, takes about 6 hours. The other cuts through a narrow canyon, comes out the same place, but only takes 3 hours." "Then we take the canyon route," Harold said from inside the coach. "It's risky. The canyon floods easy if there's rain, and I saw clouds building over the peaks. But it's our best chance to put distance between us and anyone following." Pierce looked directly at Olivia. "I won't lie to you folks. Either choice has danger, but I think the canyon is our better bet." "I trust your judgment," Olivia said, and meant it. There was something about this man, a core of competence and strength that made her feel safer than she had since leaving Missouri. Pierce nodded. "Canyon it is. Let's move." The trail grew even narrower as they progressed, and within another hour, the trees began to thin as they entered a region of bare rock and scrub brush. The canyon opening appeared ahead, a narrow cleft in the stone that looked barely wide enough for the stagecoach. "This is it," Pierce called back. "Driver, you're going to want to fold in your side mirrors. Tight squeeze in places." They entered the canyon, and Olivia felt as if the walls were closing in around them. The stone rose 50 feet or more on either side, blocking out much of the afternoon sun and casting them into cool shadow. The floor was sandy, showing evidence of water flow in the channels worn into the rock. Pierce dismounted and began walking ahead of the stagecoach, leading his horse and examining the ground carefully. They had progressed perhaps a quarter-mile into the canyon when he stopped abruptly, kneeling to examine something. "What's wrong?" the driver called. Pierce stood slowly, his expression grim. "This sand is damp. There has been water flowing through here recently. We need to move fast." As if summoned by his words, a low rumble echoed through the canyon. Olivia felt a vibration through the floor of the coach, subtle but unmistakable. That's not thunder," Martha whispered. "Flash flood!" Pierce shouted. "Driver, whip those horses! Go, now!" The driver needed no further urging. He cracked the reins and the horses lunged forward. Pierce vaulted onto his own mount and galloped ahead, scouting the route. The rumble grew louder, and Olivia looked back to see a wall of brown water surging around the bend behind them, filling the canyon from wall to wall. "Faster!" she screamed, though the driver was already pushing the horses as hard as he dared on the uncertain footing. The water gained on them rapidly, a churning mass of liquid power that carried rocks and debris in its grip. Olivia could feel the coach bouncing violently as they raced forward, could hear Martha's prayers mixing with Harold's steady stream of encouragement to the driver. Pierce appeared beside the coach, his horse running flat out. "There's a slope ahead on the right side," he shouted over the roar of approaching water. "Climb it, it's our only chance." Olivia saw it, a break in the canyon wall where rockfall had created a steep incline leading up and out of the canyon floor. The driver angled toward it just as the leading edge of the flood reached the back wheels of the coach. The horses hit the slope and scrambled upward, their hooves throwing up sand and loose rock. The coach tilted backward at a terrifying angle, and for a moment Olivia was certain they would flip. But the driver kept the team moving, and inch by terrible inch they climbed above the flood level. They emerged onto a flat ledge just as the full force of the water roared past below them, filling the canyon with churning fury. The coach came to a stop, the horses heaving and trembling. Everyone sat in shocked silence for a long moment. Pierce dismounted and came to the coach door, pulling it open. "Everyone all right?" Olivia found she could not speak, could only nod. Her whole body shook with adrenaline and fear. Pierce's expression softened, and he reached in, taking her hand. "Come on out. You're safe now. Let's get you on solid ground." His grip was steady and strong, an anchor in the chaos of her emotions. Olivia climbed out on shaking legs and stood on the ledge, staring at the water that still thundered through the canyon below. "If we had been 30 seconds slower," she whispered, "but we weren't." Pierce stood beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "You're safe. That's what matters." She turned to look at him, this mountain man who had now saved them twice in a single day, and felt something shift inside her chest. In his weathered face and steady eyes, she saw not just strength but also kindness, not just competence but also care. Thank you," she said quietly. "Again. Doing my job." But his hand had not released hers, and his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her heart beat faster for entirely different reasons than fear. The moment broke when the driver called out, "Mr. Barrett, how do we get off this ledge?" Pierce finally released Olivia's hand, though she felt the loss of his warmth immediately. He moved to survey their position, and after a few minutes of studying the terrain, he pointed further along the ledge. "We follow this shelf for about 100 yards. It connects with the upper trail. We will come out above where the canyon exits. Longer route, but we will beat that water." "And the raiders?" Harold asked. "If they followed us into the canyon, they're swimming right now. If they didn't, we've lost them." Pierce moved to check the stage horses again. "These animals are spent. We'll need to make camp soon. Let them rest proper." The sun was sinking toward the western peaks by the time they navigated off the ledge and back onto a proper trail. Pierce led them to a sheltered meadow with good grass for the horses and a clear view of the approaches. While the driver tended to the team, Pierce began setting up a camp with efficient, practiced movements. Olivia watched him work, fascinated by the economy of his actions. He seemed to waste no energy, every movement purposeful. Within minutes, he had a fire going and was unpacking supplies from his saddlebags. "I've got coffee and some cornmeal," he announced, "plus some dried venison. Not fancy, but it will fill your bellies." "Let me help," Olivia offered, moving to join him by the fire. "I may not know much about surviving in the wilderness, but I can cook." Pierce glanced at her, then nodded. "Appreciate it. There's a pot in my gear there, and a bag of meal." Working together, they prepared a simple meal, while the others rested by the fire. Olivia found herself acutely aware of Pierce's proximity, the way his shoulder occasionally brushed hers as they worked, the deep timbre of his voice when he gave quiet instructions. "You said you have a teaching position waiting in Denver?" he asked as she stirred the cornmeal mush. "Yes, at a school for mining families. It's not much, but it's a start. A chance to build a life of my own." She paused, then added, "My mother died last winter. She had debts I didn't know about. I lost everything, including our home. This job was the only option I had besides marrying, and I refused to marry just for security." Independent spirit. There was approval in his voice. Nothing wrong with that. World needs more people willing to make their own way. Says the man who lives alone on a mountain. She glanced at him with a slight smile. Though I suppose that is independence taken to its logical extreme. Maybe. He fed another stick into the fire, the flames highlighting the strong planes of his face. Or maybe it's just hiding. Haven't figured out which yet. The honesty of his answer touched her. "Well, either way, I'm grateful you were willing to come down from your mountain long enough to help us." "Couldn't let those raiders keep preying on travelers." His jaw tightened. "I've seen what men like that do when they think they're above the law. Someone needs to stand against it." They ate in companionable silence, the meal simple but satisfying after the day's ordeals. As darkness fell completely, the temperature dropped sharply, and Olivia found herself shivering despite her shawl. Pierce noticed immediately. "You're cold. Here." He shrugged out of his leather vest and draped it over her shoulders. The garment was still warm from his body heat and carried the scent of leather, wood smoke, and pine. "What about you?" Olivia protested. "I'm used to the cold." "You're not." He moved to his saddlebags and pulled out several blankets. "I've got enough bedrolls for everyone. You ladies should sleep closest to the fire. Driver and Harold, you take the next positions. I'll keep first watch." "You need sleep too," Martha pointed out. "I'll wake the driver in a few hours to take a turn. I'm fine." Pierce began distributing the blankets, and Olivia noticed he kept the thinnest, most worn one for himself. They settled in for the night, and despite her exhaustion, Olivia found sleep elusive. She lay wrapped in Pierce's vest and the blanket, watching him sit by the fire with his rifle across his knees. He stared out into the darkness, and she wondered what thoughts occupied his mind during these long night watches. At some point, she must have drifted off because she woke to find gray dawn light filtering through the trees and Pierce crouched by the fire, feeding it back to life. He looked tired, and she realized he had probably stood watch all night rather than wake anyone else. "Good morning," she said softly, not wanting to wake the others yet. He glanced over, and his expression softened when he saw her. "Morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than you, I think." Olivia sat up, still wrapped in his vest. "You should have woken someone else for watch." "Wasn't tired." But the lie was obvious in the shadows under his eyes. She moved to join him by the fire, and they sat together in comfortable silence as the mountain morning brightened around them. The others began stirring, and soon the camp was active with preparations for another day of travel. "How much further to Denver?" the merchant asked as they ate a quick breakfast of hardtack and coffee. "If we keep good pace, we should reach the outskirts by tomorrow evening," Pierce replied. "The trail gets easier from here. We've passed the worst of it." They broke camp and continued their journey, following trails that wound through increasingly gentler terrain. Pierce rode sometimes ahead, sometimes beside the coach, always watchful but gradually more relaxed as they put distance between themselves and the blocked road. Around midday, he rode up beside the coach window where Olivia sat, and she found herself smiling at his approach. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Much better now that I'm not fearing for my life every moment." She studied his face, seeing the exhaustion still evident despite his attempts to hide it. "Will you be going back to your mountain once we reach Denver?" "That's the plan." But something in his voice suggested uncertainty. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious." Olivia hesitated, then plunged ahead. "It seems a lonely existence. Don't you ever want more? A home, a family, connections to other people?" Pierce was quiet for a long moment, and she thought perhaps she had overstepped. But then he spoke, his voice low enough that only she could hear over the rattle of the coach wheels. "Used to think I did. Before the war, I was engaged to be married. Pretty girl from my hometown in Ohio. But when I came back, I wasn't the same man she remembered. The things I'd seen, the things I'd done, they changed me. She tried to understand, but eventually, she admitted she was frightened of me, of what I'd become. He paused, staring at his hands on the reins. After that, I figured it was better to be alone. Couldn't hurt anyone that way. Couldn't disappoint anyone. Olivia's heart ached at the pain in his words. That girl was a fool, she said fiercely. War changes everyone it touches. She should have stood by you, helped you heal, not abandoned you when you needed her most. His eyes snapped to hers. Surprise, evident? You don't know me, don't know what I'm capable of. I know you've saved my life twice. I know you've been nothing but kind and protective to all of us. I know you stand against injustice even when it puts you in danger. She held his gaze steadily. Whatever you were or whatever you did during the war, that's not who you are now. Or at least, it's not all you are. Pierce stared at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression, walls beginning to crack that had stood for years. You see things differently than most people. Maybe I just see clearly. Olivia smiled. Or maybe I'm just stubborn enough to look past the surface to what's underneath. A slow smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger and somehow more approachable despite his intimidating size and appearance. Stubborn, that I believe. He guided his horse closer to the window. Tell me about this teaching position. What made you want to be a teacher? They talked as they rode, and Olivia found conversation with Pierce came easily once he began to open up. He asked thoughtful questions and listened carefully to her answers, showing genuine interest in her hopes and dreams for her future in Denver. In turn, she drew out stories from him about his life in the mountains, the wildlife he encountered, the changing seasons and the harsh beauty of winter at high elevation. The hours passed quickly, and when they stopped for the evening, Olivia found herself disappointed that her time with Pierce was drawing to a close. Tomorrow they would reach Denver, and he would return to his solitary life in the mountains. The thought left her feeling hollow. That night, as they sat around the campfire, Harold asked Pierce about his plans. Will you go back up to your cabin right away? Should. Need to lay in supplies for winter, make sure everything's secure. Pierce poked at the fire with a stick. Winter comes early and hard in the high country. Have to be prepared. Sounds like a lot of work for one man, Martha observed. It is, but I manage. Pierce's gaze drifted to Olivia, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. Though I admit this trip has reminded me what I've been missing. Company, conversation, connection. It's not too late to change, Olivia said softly. To come down from the mountain and rejoin the world. Maybe. He stood abruptly. I'll take first watch. You folks get some rest. He walked to the edge of the firelight, and Olivia watched his broad shoulders silhouetted against the darkness. Martha leaned over and patted her hand. That's a good man there, she said quietly. A lonely one, but good. I hope he finds what he's looking for. So do I, Olivia whispered, though she was no longer sure if she meant Pierce finding peace or something else entirely. She lay awake long into the night, watching Pierce stand guard, and admitted to herself what she had been avoiding. In the span of 2 days, she had developed feelings for this mountain man who had saved her life and shown her glimpses of the wounded soul beneath his rough exterior. It was foolish, impractical, and utterly impossible, but her heart did not seem to care about logic. Tomorrow they would reach Denver, and she would probably never see him again. The thought made her chest tight with a grief that made no sense for someone she barely knew. When she finally slept, she dreamed of mountains and pale blue eyes. The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed to stretch forever. They broke camp early, and Pierce announced that they should reach the outskirts of Denver by late afternoon if they maintained steady pace. The reality of their impending arrival settled over Olivia like a weight. She found excuses to ride with her head out the window, watching Pierce as he guided them through the final stretch of wilderness. He seemed quieter today, more withdrawn, and she wondered if he felt the same conflicted emotions that churned inside her. By midday, they began to see signs of civilization, fences marking ranch properties, roads that were actually maintained rather than game trails. The mountains fell away behind them, and the landscape opened up into rolling hills and plains. Pierce called a halt at a small creek to water the horses one final time. While the others stretched and talked excitedly about reaching Denver, Olivia walked along the creek bank, needing a moment alone with her thoughts. She heard footsteps behind her and knew without looking that Pierce had followed. "We'll be in Denver in a few hours," he said, coming to stand beside her. "You'll be able to start your new life." "Yes." The word came out flat, lacking enthusiasm. "Everything I planned for, everything I wanted. You don't sound happy about it." Olivia turned to face him, and the words tumbled out before she could stop them. "How can I be happy knowing I'll never see you again? I know it's foolish. I know we barely know each other. But these past 2 days, I've felt more alive, more myself, more connected to another person than I have in years. And tomorrow you'll go back to your mountain, and I'll go to my classroom, and we'll just be two people who once crossed paths for a brief moment." Pierce stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Olivia, I am not a man suited for town living. I have demons that wake me in the night. I'm rough, uneducated beyond what the army taught me, and I don't fit in civilized society. You deserve someone better, someone who can give you a proper home, a proper life." "What if I don't want proper?" She stepped closer to him, her heart pounding. "What if what I want is real? What if I want someone who sees me as more than just a teacher or a potential wife to keep house? What if I want someone who makes me feel brave enough to be myself?" "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Olivia reached up and placed her hand against his bearded cheek, feeling him tense at her touch. "I'm saying that in 2 days, you've shown me more respect, more kindness, and more genuine care than any man ever has. I'm saying that when I look at you, I don't see someone broken or frightening. I see someone strong and brave and lonely, and I wish I could be the one to help you heal." Pierce's hand came up to cover hers, pressing it against his face. His eyes closed for a moment, and when they opened, they were raw with emotion. "I'm saying," she continued, her voice dropping to barely a whisper, "that I think I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know how to stop, and I don't know if I even want to." "Olivia." Her name on his lips was half prayer, half plea. "I don't know how to do this, don't know how to be what you need. Then we'll figure it out together." She smiled up at him through tears she had not realized were falling. "If you want to, if you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling." For answer, Pierce pulled her against his chest, wrapping his powerful arms around her and holding her as if she were something precious and fragile. She felt his heart hammering against her cheek, felt the tension in his body gradually ease as he allowed himself to accept the comfort of human contact. "I feel it," he said roughly into her hair. "God help me, I feel it. From the moment you stood up to that raider, refusing to give up your bag, I felt something. Your courage, your fire, your stubborn determination to stand your ground. You reminded me that there are things worth coming down from the mountain for." They stood there by the creek, holding each other, while the rest of the world fell away. Finally, Pierce pulled back enough to look down at her, his hands cupping her face with surprising gentleness for such large, calloused palms. "I don't have much to offer you," he said. "A cabin in the mountains, a hard life, isolation for months at a time in winter. It's nothing like what you could have as a teacher in Denver." "It sounds perfect." Olivia covered his hands with hers. "As long as you're there. What about your teaching position?" She hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. "I'll go to Denver and explain the situation. Perhaps they can find another teacher. And if not, there must be children in the mountains who need educating. Mining camps, ranch families, someone who could use a teacher. I'll find a way to make it work." Pierce's expression softened with something that looked like wonder. "You'd give up everything for a mountain man you've known for 2 days?" "I'd give up a plan for a chance at happiness. There's a difference," she smiled. "Besides, I think you're worth the risk." He bent his head slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Olivia rose on her toes to meet him, and when their lips touched, it was like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if Pierce was afraid he might hurt her with his strength. But when she pressed closer, her fingers tangling in his long hair, he deepened the kiss, pouring into it all the loneliness and longing of the past 8 years. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Pierce rested his forehead against hers, a smile playing at his lips. "I think maybe I've been waiting for you," he said quietly. "I just didn't know it until you refused to let that raider take your bag." Olivia laughed, the sound bright with joy. "All because of my mother's Bible and stubborn pride. Best reasons I can think of." He kissed her again, shorter but just as sweet. "We should get back before they send a search party." They walked back to the stagecoach hand in hand, and when the others saw them, Martha clapped her hands together with delight. "I knew it!" she exclaimed. "Harold, didn't I say there was something special between them?" The rest of the journey to Denver passed in a blur for Olivia. She rode with her hand out the window, and Pierce rode beside the coach with his hand clasping hers, neither willing to break the connection. They spoke little, but their eyes said everything that words could not. When the buildings of Denver finally came into view as the sun sank toward the horizon, Pierce called a halt. "This is where I should leave you," he said to the group. "You'll be safe from here. The town's just ahead." "What about payment for guiding us?" the driver asked. "You saved all our lives, Mr. Barrett. We owe you." "No payment needed. Just doing what's right." Pierce's eyes found Olivia's. "Though I do need to speak with Miss Preston for a moment before I go." He dismounted and came to the coach door, opening it and offering his hand to help Olivia down. They walked a short distance away while the others politely looked elsewhere. "I meant what I said," Olivia told him. "I'm not taking that teaching position. I want to come with you." "I know you meant it, but I want you to go into Denver tonight, sleep in a real bed, take a bath, think clearly about what you're choosing." Pierce held both her hands in his. "This is too important to rush. I'll be at the livery stable on Market Street tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. If you come, if you still want this life with me, I'll be there waiting. If you don't come, I'll understand. No hard feelings. You'll have done the sensible thing." "I'll be there," Olivia said firmly. "I already know what I want." "Maybe. But I need you to be sure. I need to know that when winter comes and we're snowed in for weeks at a time, you won't regret your choice. That when life gets hard, and it will get hard, you won't wish you had taken the safe path." His thumbs stroked over her knuckles. "I care about you too much to let you make this decision in the heat of emotion." She wanted to argue, to insist that she was certain, but she also recognized the wisdom in his words. And she understood that he needed this time too, needed to believe that if she came to him tomorrow, it would be with full knowledge and commitment. 9 o'clock at the livery on Market Street, she repeated. "I'll be there." Pierce pulled her close one more time, kissing her with a desperation that spoke of his own fears and hopes. When he released her, his eyes were bright with unshed emotion. "Tomorrow," he said. "Tomorrow," she promised. He helped her back into the coach, then swung onto his horse. With a final long look at Olivia, he turned and rode toward Denver, leading the way into town. The stagecoach depot was bustling with activity when they arrived. The merchant and Harold immediately began making arrangements for lodging, while Martha came to stand beside Olivia. "You're really going to do it, aren't you?" she asked. "Give up everything to follow that mountain man?" "Yes." Olivia watched Pierce tie his horse outside the livery stable down the street. "Is that completely mad?" "Maybe," Martha smiled. "But sometimes the best things in life are a little mad. I gave up a comfortable life in Boston to marry Harold and travel west 50 years ago. Everyone said I was insane. Best decision I ever made." She patted Olivia's arm. "Listen to your heart, dear. It knows what it wants." Olivia collected her carpet bag and thanked the driver for his skill in getting them through safely. She took a room at a modest hotel, using some of her carefully hoarded funds, and went upstairs to finally wash away the dust and grime of the journey. As she sat in the copper bathtub, she let herself think seriously about what she was considering. Pierce was right that life in the mountains would be hard. She would be isolated, far from any town or neighbors, dependent on his knowledge and skills for survival. Winters would be brutal, supplies limited, and medical help non-existent. But she would also be free in a way she had never been before. Free from society's expectations, free to be herself, free to build a life with a man who saw her as an equal partner rather than a possession or ornament. She thought about the connection she had felt with Pierce, the way conversation flowed easily between them, the sense of rightness when he held her. She was taking a risk, no question about it. But what was the alternative? Teach children in Denver, live a respectable but lonely life, always wonder what might have been. That felt like a different kind of death, a slow withering of her spirit. By the time she went to bed, Olivia knew her decision had not changed. She would go to that livery stable in the morning, and whatever came after, they would face it together. She woke early, too excited and nervous to sleep. She put on her most practical dress, repacked her carpet bag with only the essentials, and sat down to write 2 letters. The first was to the school board in Denver, apologizing for her inability to accept the teaching position and suggesting they contact the Missouri Teachers College for a replacement. The second was to her father's cousin, the only relative she had left, explaining her decision and promising to write again once she was settled. At 8:30, she checked out of the hotel and walked through the morning streets of Denver toward Market Street. Her heart pounded harder with each step, a mixture of excitement and lingering nervousness. What if Pierce had changed his mind? What if he did not come? But when she rounded the corner and the livery stable came into view, she saw him immediately. He stood beside his horse, dressed in clean buckskins, his hair tied back, looking like he had also spent the night wrestling with doubts and decisions. When he saw her, his whole face lit up with such pure joy that Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. She ran the last few yards, and he caught her, spinning her around before setting her down and kissing her soundly, not caring who might see. "You came," he said when they finally broke apart. "Did you really doubt I would?" "All night," he cupped her face, his eyes searching hers. "Last chance to change your mind. Once we head into those mountains, it's a long ride back." "Then it's a good thing I have no intention of coming back." Olivia smiled up at him. "I love you, Pierce Barrett. I know it's fast and I know it makes no logical sense, but I love you, and I want to build a life with you, wherever that may be. I love you too." The words seemed to come with difficulty, as if he had not spoken them in so long that he had forgotten how. "Loved you from the moment you stood your ground against that raider with nothing but stubbornness and courage. You're the bravest woman I've ever met." "Then let's go home," she gestured to his horse. "I assume I'm riding with you?" Pierce grinned, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and free. "Unless you'd rather walk, but it's a long way to walk." He mounted first, then pulled her up behind him. Olivia wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid strength of him, breathing in his scent of leather and pine. As they rode out of Denver, heading back toward the mountains, she felt no regret, no fear, only anticipation for what lay ahead. They rode for most of the day, following trails that Pierce knew by heart. He pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the mountains and the creatures that lived there, described his cabin and the life they would build together. Olivia listened and asked questions, already learning the things she would need to know to survive in this new world. As the sun began to sink, they stopped at a meadow where a small stream ran crystal clear. "We'll camp here tonight," Pierce said, helping her down. "Should reach my cabin by midday tomorrow." They worked together to set up camp, and Olivia noticed how naturally they moved around each other, anticipating needs and offering help without having to speak. Pierce started a fire while she gathered firewood. She unpacked the food supplies while he tended to his horse. After they ate, they sat by the fire, and Pierce pulled Olivia against his side, his arm around her shoulders. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead. "Tell me about your cabin," Olivia said, snuggled into his warmth. "It's not fancy. 1 room, stone fireplace, good solid roof. Built it myself the first year I came up here." His voice rumbled in his chest beneath her ear. "There's a lean-to for the horse, a good spring nearby, and a view that takes your breath away. In summer, the meadow in front is full of wildflowers. In winter, the snow gets deep, but the cabin stays warm." "It sounds wonderful." "It's isolated," he warned again. "The nearest neighbor is a prospector about 10 miles south, and I only see him a few times a year. The closest town is 2 days' ride. If we need supplies, it's a journey. If there's an emergency, we're on our own." "I understand." Olivia tilted her head to look up at him. "I'm not going into this blind, Pierce. I know it will be difficult, but I'm also not some fragile flower who will wilt at the first sign of hardship. I may not know mountain living yet, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm strong enough to handle it." Pierce kissed the top of her head. "I believe you, but I also want to make sure you know that if you ever want to leave, if it becomes too much, I'll take you to town. No questions, no hard feelings. Your happiness matters more to me than my own. That's what makes me certain I'll never want to leave, she said softly, because you care more about what I need than what you want. That's real love, Pierce. That's the kind of love worth building a life on. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire. Then Pierce spoke again, his voice thoughtful. I need to tell you something, about the war, about why I came up here. He paused, and Olivia felt him tense. You should know what kind of man you're tying yourself to. You don't have to tell me if it's painful. I want to. You deserve to know. He took a breath. I was a sharpshooter, one of the best in my regiment. They'd give me a position, tell me who needed to die, and I'd make it happen. Clean, efficient from a distance. I was good at it. Too good. Olivia said nothing, just held him tighter. After a while, it stopped feeling like war and started feeling like murder. Every face in my rifle sights was someone's son, someone's husband, someone's father, and I was the one who ended their story. His voice was rough with old pain. When the war ended, I tried to go home, tried to pretend I was still the same person. But I wasn't. The killing was over, but I could still see every face, still remember every shot. My fiancé took one look at me and knew I was someone different, someone damaged. Someone who survived something terrible, Olivia corrected gently. Someone who did what they had to do and carried the weight of it. That's not damage, Pierce. That's being human. Maybe, he pulled her closer. I came up here because I needed silence, needed to be somewhere the ghosts couldn't follow. And it helped. The mountains gave me peace I couldn't find anywhere else. But it was also lonely. So lonely that sometimes I wondered if I'd made a mistake, if isolation was just another form of death. And now? She asked. Now I have a reason to live instead of just survive. He tilted her chin up and kissed her, slow and deep. You're my second chance, Olivia. A chance to be more than what the war made me. A chance to build something instead of destroy. I'll spend every day of the rest of my life making sure you never regret giving me that chance. I won't regret it, she promised. We'll heal together, build together, love together, and when the ghosts come, we'll face them together too. They held each other as the fire burned down, finding comfort in shared warmth and the promise of a future neither had expected, but both desperately wanted. The next morning, they rose with the sun and were on the trail within the hour. Pierce's excitement was palpable as they climbed higher into the mountains, following paths that Olivia would never have seen without his guidance. The aspens were golden now, painting the mountainsides in brilliant color, and the air had the crisp bite of coming autumn. Around noon, they crested a ridge, and Pierce pulled his horse to a stop. There, he said, pointing down into a valley below. That's home. Olivia looked and felt her breath catch. The cabin sat in a meadow beside a clear stream, backed by towering pines and fronted by mountains that seemed to touch the sky. It was small and rustic, exactly as Pierce had described, but to Olivia's eyes, it was beautiful. Smoke rose from the chimney. Wait, Pierce said, tension suddenly in his voice. I didn't leave a fire burning. He spurred the horse forward, and they descended quickly into the valley. As they approached the cabin, the door opened and a figure stepped out, an older man, thin and weathered, with a prospector's gear. McAllister, Pierce said, relaxing. What are you doing here? Barrett, thank God you're back. The prospector hurried forward. I hope you don't mind. I took shelter here 3 days ago when a bear chased me off my claim. Been waiting for you to get back. I can clear out now. No need. Stay the night, head back tomorrow when you're rested. Pierce dismounted and helped Olivia down. This is Olivia Preston. She'll be staying here with me. Olivia, this is Silas McAllister, the neighbor I mentioned. Silas's eyes widened. A woman? Well, I'll be. Never thought I'd see the day you brought someone up here, Barrett. He tipped his hat to Olivia. Pleasure to meet you, miss. You're braver than most to take on life with this mountain hermit. I prefer to think of it as an adventure, Olivia replied with a smile. They went inside, and Olivia looked around what would be her new home. It was indeed simple, but it was clean and well built, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall, a rough wooden table and chairs, a bed in one corner piled with furs, shelves holding supplies and equipment. The floor was packed earth, but Pierce had laid down wood planks in a walking path. A window looked out over the meadow, and Olivia could already imagine sitting there on quiet mornings, watching the sunrise. "It's perfect," she said, and meant it. Pierce looked relieved. "I know it's not much compared to what you're used to." "It's exactly what I want." She took his hand. "Our home." Silas stayed for dinner, regaling them with stories of his prospecting adventures and offering Olivia advice on mountain living. As darkness fell, he bedded down by the fireplace while Pierce and Olivia climbed into the loft space above, where Pierce had created a second sleeping area. They lay together on the simple bed wrapped in furs, and for the first time since they met, they were truly alone with no one watching or waiting. "Are you sure about this?" Pierce asked one more time, his hand gentle on her cheek. "Sure about me? About this life?" For answer, Olivia kissed him, putting into the kiss all her certainty, all her love, all her commitment to the choice she had made. Pierce responded with equal passion, and they lost themselves in each other, making promises with their bodies that went deeper than words. Later, as Olivia lay curled against Pierce's chest, listening to his steady heartbeat, she thought about the stagecoach journey that had brought her here. If those raiders had not blocked the road, if Pierce had not known another path, if she had not been brave enough to accept his help and open her heart to possibility, she would be alone in Denver right now, preparing to teach children while her own heart remained empty. Instead, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next morning, Silas departed for his claim, promising to stop by in a few weeks to check on them. Pierce and Olivia spent the day organizing the cabin, with Pierce showing her where everything was kept and how various tools and equipment worked. He taught her to read the weather by watching the clouds, to identify animal tracks near the stream, to tell which plants were safe to eat and which to avoid. Olivia proved to be a quick learner, absorbing information rapidly and asking intelligent questions. Pierce found himself constantly surprised by her adaptability and resilience. Where he had expected complaint or difficulty, she met every challenge with determination and good humor. Over the following weeks, they settled into a rhythm of life together. Pierce hunted and trapped while Olivia learned to preserve meat, tan hides, and cook over the fireplace. She discovered she had a talent for identifying medicinal herbs and soon had a collection drying from the rafters. Pierce taught her to shoot, and though she would never match his skill, she became proficient enough to hunt small game. They made love often and with increasing passion, learning each other's bodies and desires. Pierce was always careful with her at first, conscious of his size and strength, but Olivia encouraged him to let go of his restraint, to trust that she would not break. Their physical connection deepened the emotional bond between them, until Olivia could hardly remember a time when Pierce had not been the center of her world. One evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Pierce reached into a wooden box on the shelf and pulled out a simple gold band. "This was my mother's wedding ring," he said, turning it in his fingers. "Only thing of value I own. I want you to have it, if you'll take it. I know we haven't done this proper, with a preacher and a ceremony, but I want you to be my wife in truth. Olivia Preston, will you marry me?" Olivia felt tears spring to her eyes. Yes, of course I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he produced a second, larger ring, clearly a man's band. "This was my father's. If you're willing, I'd like you to put it on my finger. Make this official between us, even if no preacher blessed it yet." With trembling hands, Olivia took the ring and slid it onto Pierce's finger. They held each other's hands, rings glinting in the firelight. "I, Pierce Barrett, take you, Olivia Preston, as my wife," Pierce said solemnly. "I promise to love you, protect you, stand by you, and build a life with you for as long as I draw breath." "I, Olivia Preston, take you, Pierce Barrett, as my husband," Olivia replied, her voice steady despite the emotion flooding through her. "I promise to love you, support you, challenge you, and walk beside you through whatever comes for as long as I live." They sealed their vows with a kiss, and that night their lovemaking had a new dimension, a sense of complete belonging and commitment that transformed the physical act into something transcendent. As autumn deepened into winter, they made a trip down to the nearest town, a small mining settlement called Silver Peak. There, they found a traveling preacher and made their marriage legal in the eyes of the law and the church. They also purchased supplies for the winter, including fabric for Olivia to make curtains and clothing, books to read during the long, dark months, and paper and pencils so she could write to her cousin. Back at the cabin, they prepared for winter in earnest. Pierce chopped wood until they had a massive stack beside the cabin. Olivia preserved everything they could not eat fresh, filling the root cellar with supplies. They checked and rechecked the cabin's defenses against cold, stuffing gaps with moss and mud, ensuring the roof was sound. The first snow came in late October, and by early November they were snowed in properly. The world outside the cabin became a white wilderness, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. But inside, the cabin was warm and cozy, and Olivia discovered she did not mind the isolation at all. She had Pierce, she had meaningful work, and she had books to read when the work was done. They developed routines and rituals, morning coffee together watching the sunrise, Pierce teaching Olivia to play chess using pieces he had carved from wood, reading aloud to each other in the evenings, making love when the mood struck, which was often. They talked for hours, sharing stories from their pasts, dreams for the future, thoughts and opinions on everything and nothing. It was during one of these conversations, in the depths of January, that Olivia realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. She counted back and felt a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. "Pierce," she said carefully, "I think I might be with child." He looked up from the knife he was sharpening, his eyes going wide. "What? Are you sure?" "Not completely, but I'm late and I've been feeling queasy in the mornings, and my breasts are tender." She watched his face anxiously. "We never talked about children. I don't know if you want them." Pierce set down the knife and came to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. "I would love nothing more than to have children with you. But are you ready for this, having a baby up here, with no doctor, no help?" "Women have been having babies in difficult circumstances since the beginning of time," Olivia said practically. "And we have months to prepare. When the snow melts, we can go to Silver Peak and find a midwife, someone who can advise us." "You're not scared?" "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. This is our child, Pierce, our future. How could I not want that?" He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she might break. "I'm going to take such good care of you. Both of you." As winter gradually gave way to spring, Olivia's pregnancy became unmistakable. Her belly swelled, and Pierce became almost comically overprotective, insisting she rest more and work less. Olivia found his concern sweet, but also occasionally stifling, and they had their first real argument when he tried to forbid her from going outside in case she slipped on ice. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him firmly. "I need fresh air and exercise. The baby needs me to be healthy, not coddled." Pierce had apologized, though he still hovered anxiously whenever she moved around. But they worked through it, learning to balance his protective instincts with her need for independence. As soon as the trails were passable, they made the journey to Silver Peak. They found a midwife named Clara, a weathered woman with capable hands and a no-nonsense attitude. She examined Olivia and pronounced her healthy and the baby developing well. "Baby should come in early July," Clara said. "If you want, I can come up to your cabin when the time gets near. Stay for a few weeks to make sure everything goes smoothly." They gratefully accepted her offer, and Pierce paid her a generous deposit. They also purchased supplies they would need for the birth and a new baby, and Olivia bought fabric to sew baby clothes. Back at the cabin, they prepared a corner for the baby, with Pierce building a cradle from smooth pine and Olivia sewing tiny gowns and blankets. The reality of becoming parents began to sink in, bringing both joy and trepidation. "I hope I can be a good father," Pierce said one evening, watching Olivia sew. "I never had the best example. My father was hard, distant. I don't want to be like that." "You won't be." Olivia reached for his hand. "You're caring and protective and gentle when you need to be. You'll be a wonderful father." "What if the baby is afraid of me? I'm big, I'm scarred, I look intimidating." "Our baby will love you because you are their father, and because you will love them with your whole heart." She squeezed his hand. "Stop worrying, everything will be fine." But as her due date approached, Olivia found herself dealing with her own fears. What if something went wrong? What if the baby did not survive or she did not? What if she was not strong enough for this? Pierce seemed to sense her worry and held her more at night, whispering reassurances. You're the strongest woman I know. You crossed mountains, survived flash floods, and chose a life that would terrify most people. You can do this, and I'll be right there with you." Clara arrived in late June, making the journey up to the cabin with supplies and a calm confidence that immediately put Olivia at ease. She settled into the cabin, teaching Pierce what he would need to do to help during the birth and answering all of Olivia's anxious questions. The baby came on a hot July evening, just as the sun was setting over the mountains. Olivia's labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Pierce stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her brow, offering encouragement even when his face was tight with worry. Finally, as dawn light filtered through the window, their son was born, his cry strong and healthy. Clara cleaned him and wrapped him in a blanket, then placed him in Olivia's arms. "A boy," she said with a smile, "a big, healthy boy." Olivia stared down at her son, overwhelmed with love so powerful it hurt. He had Pierce's dark hair and a wrinkled red face that was somehow the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Pierce sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, staring at their child with an expression of wonder. "We have a son," he whispered. "Olivia, we have a son." "What should we name him?" she asked, unable to look away from the baby. Pierce was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'd like to name him Thomas after my brother who died in the war, but only if you agree." "Thomas Barrett." Olivia tried it out and smiled. "It's perfect. Hello, Thomas. Welcome to the world." Clara stayed for 2 weeks, making sure both mother and baby were healthy before she made the journey back to Silver Peak. Those early weeks were exhausting and overwhelming, with Thomas needing to feed constantly and Olivia's body recovering from the birth. But they were also filled with joy and wonder as Pierce and Olivia learned to be parents. Pierce proved to be a natural father, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he held his tiny son. He would walk Thomas around the cabin when the baby fussed, singing old songs in his deep voice until the child settled. Olivia would watch them together and feel her heart swell with love for both of them. As Thomas grew, the cabin filled with new sounds, baby laughter and cries mixing with the everyday noises of mountain life. Pierce and Olivia fell into new routines, dividing responsibilities and supporting each other through the exhaustion and challenges of new parenthood. By the time Thomas was 6 months old, Olivia felt they had found their rhythm. Pierce continued to hunt and trap, now with even more determination to provide for his growing family. Olivia cared for Thomas and maintained the household, finding joy in the simple domestic tasks that once might have seemed mundane. One evening, as they sat by the fire with Thomas sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Pierce turned to Olivia with a serious expression. "I've been thinking," he said, "about our future, about Thomas's future." "What about it?" "He'll need more than we can give him up here. Education, opportunities, connections to the wider world. I don't want him to grow up as isolated as I was after the war." Pierce paused. "I'm not saying we should leave the mountains. This is our home. But maybe we could spend winters in town, rent a place in Silver Peak, let Thomas go to school, be around other children, then come back up here in spring and summer." Olivia considered this. "That could work. We would have the best of both worlds, solitude when we want it, community when we need it. And you could teach again if you wanted. I know you gave up that dream when you chose me." "I didn't give it up. I just changed how I approached it," she smiled. "But I admit, I have missed teaching. The idea of working in a school again, even part-time, appeals to me." They talked late into the night, making plans for how this arrangement could work. By the time they went to bed, they had decided to try it the following winter, when Thomas would be old enough to make the journey safely. The years that followed found them settling into this pattern. Summers in the mountains, where Thomas learned to track animals, identify plants, and appreciate the wild beauty of the high country. Winters in Silver Peak, where he attended school, Olivia taught reading and arithmetic to mining children, and Pierce worked as a guide for hunters and trappers. Thomas thrived with this arrangement, growing into a bright, curious boy who loved both the wilderness and books in equal measure. When he was 4, his brother James was born, followed 2 years later by their sister Catherine. The cabin grew crowded with the expanding family, and Pierce built an addition, creating separate sleeping areas and more living space. Life was not always easy. There were hard winters when supplies ran low, summers when illness swept through Silver Peak, moments of fear when one of the children got hurt or lost. But through it all, Pierce and Olivia faced everything together, their love growing deeper and stronger with each passing year. Pierce's nightmares from the war became less frequent, and when they did come, Olivia was there to hold him and remind him that the past was behind him. She watched him blossom as a father and husband, watched the hard edges soften and the wounded soldier transform into a man at peace with himself and his place in the world. Olivia discovered strength she never knew she had, became competent at tasks she had never imagined learning. She could shoot game, preserve food for winter, navigate by the stars, and deliver a baby in an emergency. But she also maintained her love of books and learning, teaching not just her own children, but also founding a small lending library in Silver Peak that became a community hub. As their children grew, the story of how Pierce and Olivia met became family legend. Thomas especially loved hearing about the raiders blocking the road, his father's clever bluff, and the dangerous journey through flooded canyons. Catherine would ask her mother to tell the part about refusing to give up her carpet bag, while James preferred the dramatic flood escape. "You were so brave, Mama," Catherine would say, snuggled against Olivia's side. "Your father was the brave one," Olivia would always correct. "I just knew a good man when I saw one, and was stubborn enough not to let him get away." Pierce would pull her close and kiss the top of her head. "Best thing that ever happened to me was those raiders blocking that road. Made me take a chance I never would have otherwise." Years turned into decades. Thomas grew up and married a girl from Silver Peak, staying close to work as a hunting guide like his father. James became fascinated with engineering and went east to study, eventually returning to help develop mining operations in more efficient and safer ways. Catherine surprised everyone by becoming a doctor, one of the first female physicians in the territory. Pierce and Olivia grew old together, their hair turning gray, their faces weathered by sun and time. But their love never dimmed. They still held hands while walking, still talked for hours by the fire, still made each other laugh with shared jokes and memories. One evening, when they were both in their 60s, they sat on the porch of their cabin watching the sunset over the mountains. Their grandchildren were visiting, filling the cabin with noise and energy. Pierce had his arm around Olivia's shoulders, and she leaned into his solid warmth. "Do you ever regret it?" Pierce asked suddenly. "Giving up that teaching position in Denver? The life you could have had?" Olivia looked up at him in genuine surprise. "Regret it? Pierce, how could I possibly regret the best decision I ever made? This life, with you, our children, our grandchildren, this place, these mountains that became home. This is more than I ever dreamed of having. Even when times were hard, when we struggled to make ends meet, when you were isolated for months at a time, especially then." She took his weathered hand in hers, their wedding band still gleaming after all these years. "Because we faced it together. Because you were always there, always strong, always loving. You gave me adventure and purpose and a love that most people only read about in books. How could I regret that?" Pierce kissed her, soft and sweet. "I love you. Olivia Barrett. Have loved you since the day you refused to surrender your mother's Bible to those raiders. Will love you until I draw my last breath. And I love you." She rested her head on his shoulder, watching the mountains turn gold and purple in the fading light. "My mountain man who knew another path, you didn't just lead me through those mountains safely all those years ago. You led me to a life beyond anything I imagined possible." They sat together as darkness fell, surrounded by the sounds of their family inside the cabin, the whisper of wind through the pines, the distant call of an owl. The raiders who had blocked that stagecoach road so long ago had meant to bring harm and fear. Instead, they had inadvertently set in motion a chain of events that led to this, a love story written across the mountains, a family built on trust and courage, a life rich in all the ways that mattered. Pierce had known another path through the mountains, and in taking it, he had led Olivia not just to safety, but to everything her heart had been seeking. And she, in turn, had led him out of isolation and pain into a life filled with love, purpose, and connection. Their grandchildren would eventually tell the story to their own children, keeping alive the tale of the mountain man and the teacher who met during a dangerous journey and built a life together in the wild places. It would become part of family history, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come not from the paths we plan, but from the unexpected detours that force us to find new ways forward. And every telling would end the same way, with two people who found each other against all odds, chose each other despite every obstacle, and loved each other through everything life brought, proving that real love, the kind worth having, is always worth the risk of the unknown path. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Pierce and Olivia went inside to join their family, their hands still linked, their hearts still entwined, their story complete and perfect in its simplicity. Two souls who had found each other on a mountain road and never let go, building a life that was worth every challenge, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of love story that deserved a happy ending. And they lived it, fully and completely, right down to the very last perfect chapter.